Hello everybody and welcome to this Your Overseas Home webinar covering today everything you need to know about visas and healthcare before you move to Portugal. My name's Hannah and I'm one of the team here at Your Overseas Home. Now some of you may already know us, but if you don't, we as a business have been assisting property buyers to help purchase their property for over 10 years now. We do this by sharing useful information and resources and connecting you with some of the leading industry experts who are going to help you through all of the process, help you save money and make it as fun and enjoyable as possible for you. Now, we've been hearing this week in the news, certainly here in the UK, that the COVID situation is improving and thankfully some of the travel restrictions are starting to lift. So what we've been hearing from you, our customers, is that we are going to see a surge in demand for European properties this summer. So to help you on that journey, I'm joined by two experts today who are going to share their expertise. First up, you'll hear from Dr. Sofia Mello of Martinez Echevarria, Ferreira and Rivera, which I'm never able to pronounce as fantastically as Sofia will for us later. Now, Sofia works in immigration law on a daily basis, and as the firm as a whole are experts in helping our expat customers relocate and purchase property in Portugal. After Sophia's spoken, you'll hear from Jeremy Wolf of MedAssurance. Now, Jeremy has worked in the field of insurance for a number of years. He's got fantastic expertise and connections in the industry, and he'll be well placed to help you understand the types of policy and cover that you need before you head over to Portugal. Throughout today's session, we do want to answer as many of your burning questions as possible. And for those of you who are listening in live, do pop your questions down in the tab to the right-hand side of your screen. And as soon as the speakers have spoken, I will get as many of those queries answered for you. We estimate about 45 to 50 minutes today, and I won't take up any more of that time. So first off, I will hand over to Sophia, who will take us through her presentation. Over to you.
Hello, everybody. Hope you are all okay, all safe, all healthy. Everyone are you listening to me, Hannah and Jerry? Okay, nice. Good morning to all. Thanks for being here with us. Good morning from Portugal. We are having a very nice sunny morning. And in fact, this region of the Algarve, in fact, where I live, it's very pleasant especially in this time of the year. So I am Sofia Mello. I am a lawyer since 2001. I started my career in the center of Portugal, in Coimbra. I am from the north of Portugal, and then when we had kind of a crisis in 2008, 2009 in Portugal, and I wanted to work with real estate and investments and foreign citizens, so I decided to come to the Algarve around 2012. So since then, I worked here in the Algarve. I worked connected to several real estate agencies. And in 2017, I came to Martinez Echevarria, Ferreira, and Rivera, it's Spanish, in 2017 to work as a senior lawyer, having this core business on real estate investments, foreign citizens, investments in Portugal for residents, for holidays, and I'm very happy with my activity. I like to work in the Algarve. I like to live here. As a northern born citizen, I came to the Algarve searching for this quality of life. So I hope to be of assistance here with you, answering your questions if you are interested in doing this kind of investments. So we hope to be helpful. Okay. So as I'm just passing here, this is my, kind of a resume of my career, and my law degree was in Coimbra, in the center of Portugal, one of the oldest universities. Then I have a postgraduate degree in consumer law, also in urbanism, so things about buildings and construction. And I speak, beside Portuguese, English, French, and Spanish. I can understand a little bit of Italian, but not enough to say I speak Italian. Okay, our office. We have offices in Spain, Portugal, and also Turkey. And we have a lot of partners also in other countries. But in fact, our main office is Spanish, so the base is Spanish, one of the biggest offices in the south of Spain. And in Portugal, the Portuguese branch has 7 offices, 4 in the Algarve, 2 in Lisbon, and 1 in Oporto. So we hope to be of assistance also in all the country. So our, not only mine, but our all of our colleagues in our office has this experience about real estate, international tax consultancy, golden visa, non-habitual residence for tax purposes, immigration law, and also rentals and lease contracts and lease licenses. So starting on the business and going to do what really you want to know is about this. We have several ways of getting residency visas in Portugal. For this in this presentation, I will talk about 3 of them. Because there are, of course, if you want to work in Portugal, if you have a working contract, if you come to study, if you come to health care, just for that, there are specific visas for that purpose. But if it's not the case, if you just you have the purpose to come to Portugal to start your own business, just if you have your own income and you want just live here to for sure and permanently, or if you want a residency visa that you don't need to live here permanently, but you have to have the visa. So there are these 3 ways of getting it. So D7, D2, and golden visa. The D7 is the D7 and the D2 is for the purpose of be really living in Portugal for at least more than 6 months. So most of the year, if you want to live in Portugal, be here and be connected to the country for more than half of the year, yes, D7 and D2 are the visas that you can apply for. So the D7 is if you are retired, if you have your own income from any other activity, like from pensions, assets, property, intellectual property, or financial investments. So you have your own income in your country, but you want to live in Portugal permanently. So you can apply for a D7. The D2 is when you want to come to Portugal to start a business or be here as self-employed, like you have your own company, you want to live in Portugal and work from Portugal, so you can apply for a D2. The golden visa is, maybe this is much on the news than the D2 and the D7. It's a visa that allows you to have a residency visa and be free to travel around Europe without asking for specific visas, but not having to be connected to the country. The golden visa demands that you do a kind of investment in Portugal, like buying a property or starting a company, creating employments, and much other ways to doing it. But basically, you buy a property. It's the most used way to do it, and you apply for a visa and you get a visa, but you don't need to live or declare taxes or whatever in Portugal. You just have to be in Portugal each 2 years. In each 2 years, you just have to be in Portugal for 2 weeks, 1 week per year. The 2 weeks in 1 year doesn't matter. So the golden visa doesn't request really living in Portugal, and that's why people are so interested in it, because they can move on with their lives in their own countries, but having this residency permit to come to Portugal and to all Europe. So major differences between these 3 ways of getting residency. The D2 and the D7, it's, as I said, a long stay visa, and they are therefore a precondition for applying for a residence permit. So For the D7 and D2 and other kind of residency visas, you have to go to the Portuguese consulate before you come into Portugal to deliver most of the documents that you will need. So you need preparation acts before coming to Portugal. For the golden visa, it's kind of different. You come to Portugal, of course, you have to do the investment on a certain way. You have to have a bank account in Portugal. You have to do the payments through the bank account in Portugal and all of that. Of course, we are able to help you on all of that, but you can apply for the golden visa when you are already in Portugal with no need of preparation acts in your country before you come. So, for the D2 and D7, you have to go when you decide, okay, I'm willing to go to Portugal and I want to, my preference is for the D2 or D7 if you are an entrepreneur or if you have your own income and you want to spend it in Portugal, living here. So you have to go first to gather documents and go first to the Portuguese consulate or embassy in your own country and apply and do the application. They may take a maximum of 60 years to analyze and give you a visa that will have a validity of 120 days. And you can use that during those 4 months. You can use that to 4 months, no, 6 months. You can use that to enter twice in Portugal. But one of those two entries, you have to come to Portugal to finish the application. So you apply in the consulate in your country, and then you come to Portugal and make an appointment in the foreign services to finish the process. What is finishing the process? The finishing the process is, going for the biometrics. They take your photo, they prepare everything. You deliver the original of the documents that you didn't deliver before, and it's the preparation of the residency plastic card that will be your identification as a Portuguese resident. So during this period of the 6 months, the applicant must travel to Portugal to apply for the residence permit personally. So starts in your country in the consulate and finishes here in Portugal when you arrive. Then you have to wait that they issue the residency permits to give you. You go there to pick it, and then you have that pass to live in Portugal and to travel around Europe without no problems. So the golden visa. Well, the golden visa, it's kind of a fantasy name because the legal name of this permit is ARI. It's authorization for residence for investment, ARI. So we call it golden visa because it's easier to memorize, and we know already what it is. But there is a reason why it's called golden, and I'm just telling you about it now. Because for the D2 and D7, you make the application, you don't need to buy a property, you can rent it. You can rent a property or declare that a friend is allowing you to stay on his house, or it cannot be an Airbnb. In the beginning it can, so you can declare to the consulate that, okay, I will rent an Airbnb for 1 month to go to Portugal, that's okay. But later you have to declare a residence. So rent it, buying, taking it from a friend, it's okay. But for the golden visa, you need to make an investment to be able to apply. So golden visa needs an investment. It can be several investments, but the most used is buying a property for more than 500,000 euros in Portugal. There are exceptions, and of course, I'm sure it will be questions from the audience saying that they heard about it, and I will explain it later because I know this is going to be asked. There are ways of buying cheaper properties, but there's obligations on that, and there's specific situations. The golden visa, it's a much more expensive on the fees paid to the government. D2 and D7 you can spend for each residency permit, so for each person, up to 200, 300 euros in public fees, in tax, in not taxes, in fees paid to the government. The golden visa for each residence permit, so for each person, can be up to 6,000 euros, because they ask for a fee for to analyze your process of 500 something euros, and then to issue the visa, it's 5,500 euros more or less. So it's more expensive. So people preparing this kind of investment, they need to not only preview the investment, the price of the property they are going to pay, the purchase taxes, but also the taxes, the fees that are going to be paid to the foreign services just to get the card. So we normally say this to the clients to say, okay, maybe you have to think very good, which is your purpose. Of course, if you don't want to live in Portugal, the golden visa is the only way, because the D2 and D7 and the others, these, they need you to live here and declare here and be a fiscal resident in Portugal, but the golden visa, no. So golden visa, more expensive, but also with a simple procedure. So the procedure starts here in Portugal after doing the purchase or doing the investment, and it's delivering the documents to CEF. CEF is the Foreign Citizen Services. And then it's needed to submit the documents. They will approve, and then there is an appointment also for biometrics and photo to issue the card. So this is the main initial differences. So one of the biggest difference lies in the minimum period of stay in Portugal after obtaining the residence permit. So for the D2s and D7s, you cannot be out of Portugal for more than 6 consecutive months or 8 interpolated months. Which means, of course, if you are traveling by plane or by any other means of transportation, of course, there will be a control. By car, as in Europe, the borders, if we don't have COVID, are open, it's harder to control. But you must have in mind that if you apply for D2 or D7, you must be really a resident in Portugal and respect those rules, or you may have problems after if they discover that you were most of the year out. The foreign national holding a residence permanent based on the golden visa must be in Portugal for 14 days every 2 years. We could say 1 week per year, yes, but no. Imagine that in the first year you came for 2 weeks, and the next year you just don't come to Portugal. No, not a problem at all, because 2 years, 14 days. Okay, the last difference is in the exercise of professional activity. So the D2, it's for entrepreneurs, and the golden visa allows the citizen to work in Portugal. For the D7, we call it, in fact, we call it the D7, the proper visa for retired people that decide to, spend the rest of their lives, or at least a good part of it, in Portugal. So they have their own income, they have their pensions, and they come to Portugal. So it's not supposed them for work, but after they get the residency card, we don't advise it to start a business while they don't have, where they're waiting for the residency card. It can take some months. But after getting that, maybe it's possible, it's needed to consult the services, maybe it's possible to open an activity and do some kind of work, because retired people, they are not dead. So they need to work. Sometimes they arrive to Portugal, they have another energy, and they still feel the need to work. So that's not forbidden, but it's better to get the residency first and then start a business. So, main benefits of the 3 ways of getting residence. So, all the 3 allows the citizen to do this. Possibility of entering Portuguese territory without a visa. So, who is considered resident, and the golden visa is also considered a resident, can just travel around Europe and the Schengen space, 26 European countries, freely, because they have this residency permitted in Portugal. So, living and working in Portugal, with that exception of the D7, that it's better to work for the card and then start a business, and benefit from family reunification, including spouse, minor children, adults, and married children who are dependent and study in Portugal, except in the case of the Golden Visa, in which the adult child may study anywhere in the world. First degree ascendants for the applicant or the spouse who is dependent, and minor siblings who are under the resident's guardianship. So, family reunification in this case is very important, because in any of the cases of the 2, D7, and Golden Visa, you can, with one application for the visa, for the residency visa, you can include the spouse, the minor children, if the children are already over age, if they are adults, if they are not married, and if they are still studying. In D2 and D7, they need to be studied in Portugal, because, of course, if the D2 and D7 means that the citizen has to live in Portugal, they can add the children and get residency for them too over this first application if the children are with him. So if they are with him, they need to be in Portugal studying. The exception in the Golden Visa is that the investor, as is not supposed to be living permanently in Portugal, if he has an adult child that is not married, he can be just studying in anywhere in the world, in his own country, in other country, but he can have this residency visa anyway. So also for the parents of the investor, if the investor has dependent parents that is proof that live with him in his own country, they can be also added. So a lot of people can also have residency permits with just one application for the residency visa. So become eligible for permanent residence after 5 years of temporary residence. So when you have the D2, D7, and Golden Visa, you will get for 5 years what is called temporary residence. It's like, let's call it an experimental period. So if the citizen behaves, if everything is okay, in the case of the Golden Visa, if he maintains the investment in Portugal, it will be temporary residence. After the 5 years, the citizen, if he decides to maintain the residence, he can apply for a permanent residency visa that is valid, I believe, for 5 years. So no need to renew the cards every 2 years. That's the rule. When it passes to permanent, it's more, it's longer. So after also the 5 years, on the 6th year, the holders of these visas can also apply for citizenship in Portugal. Of course, applying for citizenship means that you need to know to speak Portuguese, and a little more than the basic, a little more than just going to the supermarket. But you also have to know something about the history of Portugal, about the politics in Portugal. It's nothing very difficult, but it's supposed, if you are connected to Portugal in any kind of a way during 5 years, well, maybe it's not difficult to know something about Portugal. So there will be an exam. They will ask some questions. They will try to, simulate a dialogue. And if all goes well, the citizen also can get the citizenship, the Portuguese passport, let's call it that way. And of course, with that, they can live in Portugal, or he can live as any other Portuguese person outside of the country. And it will end like this. Okay, so basically, this was a very simple resume. Of course, every one of the people in the audience will have questions. They will have questions. I will be here to answer, because there are always practical questions and specific cases. So I will be here available for it if it's needed. Let me see if there's something. Okay.
I've got some questions, Sophia, if you're happy, if I start with some questions for you. So we've had a question in from one of our listeners, Deirdre, today, who has said they have reserved a new build property, it's not, they haven't yet completed because the property hasn't been finished being built yet, but it's over the €500,000 value for the golden visa. They've already reserved it. Is that one that they would still be eligible to use for their golden visa application?
Yes, so it can be done an application for golden visa with the still in construction property, but there are two essential queries that need to be fulfilled. So at least 500,000 must be paid to the seller. Of course, maybe the investor is not so comfortable paying, like in a promissory contract or as a deposit, a lot of money like 500,000 euros. But for the golden visa, what is most important is that the minimum investment previewed is really done, and what is considered to be done is paid to the seller. So it can be not a final deed but a promissory contract, so that needs to be paid. The second request that's very important is that all of the money, or at least the 500,000 that was paid, must have been paid through a bank account in Portugal in the name of the investor. That's why people who are in the middle of the process, they already made payments through lawyers, through directly from their accounts in their countries. But there are ways to solve this. Imagine that you do an agreement with the seller. It depends on the seller, okay? He has to trust. So we can just imagine that in a contract they already received like 10% of the price in a property that is being built. So that 10%, if that 10% are really needed to complete the 500,000, maybe it's needed to do an agreement with the seller. Okay, you return us the value, we open an account in Portugal, do the full payment again through the correct way. So that can be done. So it's needed to pay that amount of money, the minimum investment, and that payment must be done through a Portuguese bank account in the name of the investor. If this is done, it can be applied for the golden visa before the completion, before the building is finished, okay? Because 2 years after, when it comes to renovation, the building will be finished, the deed will be done, and all. So it's necessary to present those documents, but for the application, yes, it's possible.
Great, thank you so much for clearing that up. And now we've had a few questions about people working remotely. Obviously a lot of a lot of us are all working from home at the moment. Can people be living in Portugal but working remotely for a UK company? Would they need the D7? Is the D7 the appropriate visa for that situation?
Yes, because they can prove. The D7 is for the D7 if we are very, very, very simple describing this, is you have to prove you have enough income to live in Portugal. So if you are working for another company and you are living in Portugal, but you have a bank extract that says that you have your own salary, that you have your own income, yes, the D7 will be the best way to do this, because the difference with the D2 is that the D2 needs you to open activity in Portugal. So that's not the case when you are working for other companies. So yes, the D7 will be the best way to do this.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you very much for clearing that up. Now, you mentioned about sort of family unification and various different options there for people. We've had a couple of questions on that. For the golden visas, do adult non-dependent children count under the golden visa scheme?
So if the investor, imagine it's the father, so he buys a house of 400,000 euros, and he has a child that imagine a child that is married and working on itself. It can not apply for the family reunification. We had cases that were like that. We cannot just if the child is already married, so it will be on the birth certificate, so it will be shown. So the CEF will refuse to give the residency card because it's not dependent. If, of course, we know a lot that are children that are married and still dependent on their parents. In fact, that's a possibility. But legal wise, they are married, so they should not be dependent. What some parents do, if possible, is to buy another property in the name of the child that is not dependent. So if the child is unmarried, so single, what we had clients doing as the main request is that the child, okay, is dependent. If it's studying, it's considered is dependent. So for the golden visa, as the golden visa allows the child to study in other countries, so in their own country, for instance, what some people do is making a registration in a university and they will be considered as students. So it can be applied. Of course, any case will be analyzed. Of course, if the child has, imagine the investor has 60 years and the child has 40 years old and still studying. Maybe the SEF, the services, will have some doubts about it and request more documents because they will say, okay, a 40-year-old child doesn't work. Well, some of them doesn't, in fact. But in fact, if the child is still not too old, and if he registers in a kind of a public school, not public or private school or university, it can be added. But if he's married, if he has his own work, it's complicated and will not be accepted as for family reunification. So family reunification implies dependence. If the child are adults, they need to show that they are dependent. So studying or not having a job or something like that. Okay.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Now we've got a lot of questions about the D7 visa. I think a lot of the listeners today think that that's the route that they will probably be going down, but a few questions on that.
Yeah.
First of all, if they have a D7 visa, is there a limit on the amount of time they can spend out of Portugal? Do they have to spend a certain amount of time in the country, or are they able to spend some time in Portugal and some time, say, back here in the UK?
Yes, so they cannot be out of the country for 6 months in a row. Okay, so they need at least to be 6 months in Portugal living, or if or they cannot be out of Portugal for 8 months, separately. Imagine one month, January they are out, February they are in, March they are out. They cannot do that because if the services have this information that for 8 months interpolated, so separately, the citizen was out, they can call him and say, you were not, we noticed that you were most of the year out of Portugal, so your residency visa will be revoked because you are not fulfilling the requirements. So at least 5 months, as we say, 5 months and 1 day here in Portugal, they need to be, okay? As I said, if they are traveling by car when there's no COVID and there's no border control, maybe the service will not know. But by plane, all those registries go to the foreign services. So in and out, if it's 1 week or 1 month, they will know. And if they sum up 8 months out of Portugal in several entrances and coming and going, maybe that will be a problem. So at least 6 months and 1 day here in Portugal, okay?
Thank you. I'm conscious of our time and we must talk to Jeremy about healthcare in a minute. So just 2 more really quick questions for you and then I'll hand over.
Yes, I'll try to be short.
How long does the D7 visa last for?
So after approval?
Yes.
So
yeah.
the D7 starts with 5 years of temporary residency. So you have to renew each 2 years, okay? You have the card. In 2 years, you have to renovate to prove that you still have clean criminal records, you still have an address in Portugal, that you were not out of Portugal for more than 6 months. So it's renewed each 2 years. After the 5 years, so let's see, the first D7 visa, it's for 5 years, okay? If all goes well in the renovations. Because after the 5 years, the citizen has to declare if he wants the permanent residency, if he wants a permanent card of residency, like, okay, I live in Portugal and I will be here for sure, or if he wants to leave, or then you will decide. So yes, we can say it's 5 years.
Lovely, thank you. And last quick question, although I know this is a difficult one possibly to answer. In terms of proving wealth and proving how much money that you have, if they're not working, they're retirees, and proving, they are self-sufficient and have the wealth, is there an amount that they need to have? How does that work?
Yes, there is. It's and you will find all this a ridiculous amount, because what they say is that for the main person, so for the person who requests the D7, it's needed to have per month at least the minimum salary in Portugal, which is 650 euros. I believe it's 630, but let's say 650 euros per month. So if you have a pension, or if you have some kind of salary that it's that amount or more, you can be applicable for the D7. They will ask for salary receipts, they will ask for bank extracts, they will ask, if you are retired people, they will ask for the statements for a pension to see if they receive an amount per year, if dividing that for 12 months, if it's an amount of 630 or 650 years. So euros. So for the spouse, imagine for a family reunification, because each person has to have his own income. For a spouse, it's needed half of that for the family reunification. Of course, if there is children, we will count that the father or the mother needs to have minimum salary for her or him, and for each dependent, half of the minimum salary. So if the family grows, it needs to grow a little bit on the income, but the minimum values are more or less like this.
Great, that's really helpful. Thank you so much. Now, I'm conscious of our time, and I really want to make sure we've got some time to ask Jeremy some questions about healthcare.
I'm sorry for being so long.
No, not at all. It's great. It's been really, really helpful. If we have some time at the end, we might ask you some more. But in the meantime, I'm going to kick off and ask Jeremy some questions. So first of all, Jeremy, can you just give me a little bit of background information about you, about MediSurance, and sort of tell us your experience, and then we'll get into some questions for you.
Sure, I'll try and keep this as short as possible. It's nothing as complex as so Sophia's been through. Excuse me. My section is actually quite simple and easy to run through. I specialise in providing private medical insurance to the UK in terms of individuals and companies. I deal a lot of business with helping individuals and companies move to Portugal and the rest of Europe. Part of what I do is to ensure that when you're applying for your visas, you have the right policies in place, that a private medical insurance policy that goes with your visa, which stops excuse me, which avoids the delays in getting your visas in place. Now, where Portugal differs to the rest of Europe, excuse me, I haven't even started talking yet. How embarrassing, excuse me, is that when you apply for a visa in Portugal, you need to have a private medical insurance policy. Now, it doesn't have to be extensive. It can be quite a basic policy, but it's something that needs to go along with the visa so that the authorities can see you can fund any form of illness or injury and that you're not dependent on the state system until you become a resident. Once you become a resident, you can apply to the health system, which is a fantastic service, and then carry on as if you're in the UK. The Portuguese offer a health system similar to the UK, and it covers most services. But what I do is I help the individuals make sure they have all the documentation in place, which doesn't take long at all, to go with the visa applications that Sophia will produce and make life easy for you.
That's a great intro. Thank you so much, Jeremy. I hope you're okay there with your cough, and if you need to take a break at any point, just let me know. So in terms of applying for it, then, coming to you, I've decided I want to go to Portugal and I need to get a policy in place. How do I start that application process with you? What do I need to give you? How long does that process take? What information do I provide you? If you can give us a sort of explanation of how that process works.
It's actually quite a quick process. All I need is the individual's name, date of birth, and really an address where they're going to go to. I don't even need the address to get quotations. I then tend to go to like 2 or 3 only as a starting point to get the individuals a feel of what the premiums could be. If I go to 2 or 3, it gives you an overall view of what the market covers, and I'll go to the ones I go to will give you a good option to make sure it's affordable for your needs. Once I've given you those options, I can then say, okay, we want to try and reduce the cost a bit, so I'll then go look at maybe the excess levels, reduce some of the benefits. But as we know, it only has to be a basic policy to start with. Once you're there and you've got residents, you can then change that to, you can go to your local bank and get a policy which supplements the NHS service. Well, I'll call it the NHS service. It's actually called the SNS in Portugal, which supplements the service. So my end, I can get you an actual policy in place within probably 5 to 6 days from the beginning of the from having all your information.
Thank you. Now, on that, you've both mentioned there about needing to have a policy in place with your visa application, and then once that's sorted, you can move on to the SNS system. We've had a question from a gentleman, Alan. He's actually got an Irish passport rather than a British passport, and he's got an EHIC documentation in place. Would that cover him until he's got his residency sorted and he applies to be part of the Portuguese system, or does he still need a private insurance policy?
He would still need a private medical insurance policy to go with the application. There's a lot of confusion over the EHIC cards. At the end of December 20, they were replaced with the global ones, and I think they're called the global health insurance. So they're more for travel policies if you're traveling to a country as opposed to residing in a country. And a lot of people do get confused about that. So the global ones now, which replace the EH ones, are there if you're going on holiday, or you might just be going to have a look at some property and you're there for a short period of time. If you become ill, if you become injured, you can use the health service system, but that's only for a short fix. It's not a long-term fix solution.
Understand. Thank you, Jeremy. That clarifies. I hope that's answered Alan's question. Now, I'd like to say welcome to Stephen, who's listening in this morning, all the way from Tampa, Florida. So thank you so much for getting up early, Stephen. He just wanted to understand if these policies. We obviously talk a lot about our British buyers, and the majority of our customers listening in today are from the UK. But would you still be able to facilitate a policy for our customers in the US or anywhere else in the world?
I can facilitate anywhere. Again, all I need is the original country of residence, which will be the United States, where you're going to, which is Portugal, and then I will find the right policy to tie up those two countries. And then again, as I said earlier, basic information, and I can get you some quotations relatively quickly. Again, as I said earlier, once you then get to Portugal, you can then either discard that policy and go for a local policy, either through a bank or from a local broker in the town you'll be in.
Thank you. Now, I know this is always a difficult question, and you'll tell me again that it's a difficult question for you to answer, but a gentleman, Ian, who's listening in today, has asked if there's any chance we could understand what a ballpark figure of the cost, say for an annual policy for the first year, what might a customer expect to pay?
A question like that is like asking me what's the weather going to be like in London tomorrow afternoon.
I'm sorry, Jeremy, I knew you'd say that to me.
All premiums are based on benefits and age. You can have exactly the same benefits for a 23-year-old to a 65-year-old, and the premiums could be significantly different. Now, when I go to the market, I tend to always offer a policy with everything on it, because and then if the premium is acceptable, that's great. If somebody then turns around to me and says, look, can we shave a bit off? It's a bit out of our price range. I can then increase an excess level, which, a bit like car insurance, will reduce your premium, or I can take out some of the benefits. Unlike other parts of Europe, Portugal, as I said earlier, doesn't need everything on it. You can have quite a basic policy just to get you started. So again, I can reduce costs. So there is no ballpark. It just doesn't happen. You can have somebody living in Scotland, somebody living in London, both moving to Portugal, and the premiums could be different, same age and everything. So all I need, and I say I can get you ballpark figures relatively quickly, name, date of birth, and I can get you something immediately.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. That's really helpful, and we'll make sure that any of those customers that were asking, I think it was Ian in particular that asked that, but anybody else that's asked that, we'll make sure that we get you in touch with Jeremy to start understanding your personal circumstances. Now, interesting question here, which I think I know the answer to, but I do want to put it to the experts. Is it that as soon as you have your D7 visa in place, you could move to the state health system? Or do you have to wait until the D7, at the end of the 5 years of the D7 and you're applying for the next policy? I don't know if that's one for you, Jeremy, or one that you could answer, Sophia, but just can we have some clarity on that for the customers?
From my perspective, and I don't think I'm wrong, once you become a resident, you can then apply and you can use the state service immediately. There is no waiting time. But what is interesting about Portugal is that, if I'm right, about 20% of the population take out a policy to subsidise the NHS, because a lot of Portuguese treatment on their NHS system doesn't cover you everything. So you're better off to always supplement it so you can have immediate access, because a bit like the UK, much faster system by having private policy, and it will cover you for everything, whereas the local NHS system may not give you everything you may need. But yes,
that's great. Sophia's nodding along with that in agreement. So,
yes.
So that's perfect.
Yeah, it's right. Any person that becomes a resident, and I would just put here a note. This D72 and Golden Visa or the Residency Visa are for people who are from outside Europe, and unfortunately, their UK citizens, they are now considered outside. But they are, a lot of citizens, British citizens, living here in Portugal. So for them, they don't need those kind of visas. For Europe citizens, they don't need to request a residency visa. They can use their own passports or identity cards to live here. But as soon as they register themselves as residents, for the European, it's much an easier process. They arrive and they register in the city hall. They can access immediately to the SNS, to the public healthcare system. But it's a fact, and even we advise to our clients to do that. Of course, the healthcare of the public services in Portugal, it's as any other public service. So it's good. We have a lot of even American clients that are living here. They are very happy with that. But in fact, if you have a health insurance, you can get, private assistance or clinics a lot faster, because you don't have to wait on a list to get, some surgery, some treatments, even the simplest consultations. And with an health insurance, it's cheaper. If you have to use a lot the consultations on very specialities, you can pay up to 10 euros a consultation that costs up to 100 euros. Yeah. So most of our clients, even the Portuguese people, they have this health insurance as a subsidiary way of getting health care more quickly than in the public services.
That's great. Thank you, Sophia. Now I've got one last question, Jeremy, if you don't mind. We've had a lot of people asking about this. Can you just talk to us about what happens in terms of pre-existing medical conditions and what impact that might have for the customers?
When you take out a policy with a provider, you always have to be underwritten, and by that I mean is how are you going to apply for the application? And you apply for it on 2 counts, and it always is dependent on the provider. In most cases, it's done on a full medical underwriting basis, or FMU for short, which some people use. With that, it means you're asked you ask 20 to 21 questions, depending on the provider, on your health. If you answer yes to any of those questions, the provider may, not saying they will, they may exclude those conditions from you being covered on your policy. Once you're excluded, it's very difficult to remove those exclusions. But I go through that in great detail with the client at the time of the application, because there is another alternative we can use called a moratorium. But again, that depends on the client. Sorry, that depends on the provider. On who we use will depend on the type of underwriting. But in most cases, it's full medical underwriting. So yes, those conditions will be excluded.
That's great, thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm conscious of the time this morning. We're over our 50 minutes that I promised you. Thank you to everybody who's put in their questions there. If there was anything that we didn't get to answer, or anything that really led to very specific requirements, or the question for Jeremy about the costs, we will share both Sophia and Jeremy and their team's contact information with you. We'll send that out in an email so you can speak directly and get your specific queries answered, and hopefully they'll be able to help you with your relocation. We're going to pop a link on the screen in a couple of seconds, which links through to the Your Overseas Home website. On that website, you'll be able to get a recording of this session if you want to refresh your memory, show it to the family, anything like that. And you'll also be able to see any of the previous sessions we've done on any other topics as well. A few customers today did ask about tax residency, about pensions, questions like that. We've actually got some sessions happening over the next few weeks that will address the sort of wealth and tax and finances and currency angle when you're moving to Portugal. So do have a look and register for those. And we've also got some other sessions that will cover the buying process, introduce you to estate agents if you're still thinking about your property decisions and everything. So do have a look on our website for all of those other resources. I just want to say thank you to you all for joining us this morning on your Saturday to get this insight and expertise. And crucially, thank you so much to Sophia and Jeremy for sharing all of that wonderful information with us. It's been really, really valuable. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and learned a lot. And the last thing to say from me and from everybody at Your Overseas Home is we wish you a really happy and successful move to Portugal. Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks.